Hey,
I need that one day, that one buffer. But even that one day, it's like dad, 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 dad.
man. Okay, so you started in coffee.
Dude, I'm coming up on 20 years.
You're coming up on
next
20
month.
years. So you're like
August 6th,
August 6, 03?
03.
03.
My
Okay.
first day in the cafe.
So boom. For the sake of like understanding our industry. Dang, first off, it's kind of funny that we both remember our dates because yours is August 6th, mine is May 19th. It's crazy that we still remember that. You were you had like a 8-year-old at the time that you started?
Yep.
Okay. So you worked in coffee at a time where you were probably around the age of most of your coworkers and had like a child, which most of them didn't. You were a little older than your coworkers?
Yeah, I was 33.
Okay. 33.
I was 33 when I started. Everybody in my cafe, they were mostly college kids.
Okay, got it. Okay.
Because we were on a college
campus. Right.
And
so,
the one woman who didn't like to do work, she was closer to my age.
okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, because you only worked in one cafe, I think it's a little different. But for me, especially being in these city areas, like you worked with a lot of people that like coffee was their day job when they like were a server, bartender, whatever at nighttime, artist, performer, whatever it may be, right? So like being around 33-year-olds in the cafe setting wasn't too shocking for me.
Right.
But for the most part, I was always like the only or one of the only parents.
I was definitely one of the only parents.
Exactly.
Even the owner didn't have kids.
Exactly. So how did that affect your like way that you looked at stuff? Because I know for me, like you talk about like having the coworker that wasn't gonna do nothing, the coworker that you knew would be your homie while you was there. Like, how did I gotta take care of my kid really pivot how you navigated these spaces with a bunch of people that didn't understand?
Yeah, I mean, I took it as one, I looked like I was 12 years old back then. So everybody assumed I was their age.
Right.
And I mean, even today, people still assume I'm their age, especially if they're in their 30s, So, back then, I mean, even before I had Danya, my daughter, I was very flighty. I'd get a job, didn't really care about it, and didn't really care if I got fired or if I just quit day of, stuff like that. But after having, a child, everything I did had a purpose. Everything meant something. So who I was important to me, and everybody else's perception of who I am. Because I was driven. Everything I did, especially like DJing at night, then coming and opening a cafe, working in a cafe, that round the clock kind of thing, that hustle, everything was had a purpose. So, when folks like, I'm just going to call her out, Anishka, when she would come in and not do work, it would irk me. It would get under my skin because I'm like, you're older than these kids. These kids don't have a purpose, so to speak. They don't have that drive yet. They're still trying to figure out who they are. And you know who you are, yet you still act like these young kids. You know what I'm saying? And that kind of stuff would get under my skin. But, 18, 19-year-olds, okay, I was an 18, 19-year-old. Right. I expect that from you, right. So it didn't really bother me that, some of these kids wouldn't show up for work or they would be late for work, but it did bother me that, this 30-year-old, who was supposed to have it together, didn't have it together.
I mean, and that's living in the city. I think one of the things that you learn is that, for example, right now I'm 29. And one of the things that I've been having some conversations with like some of my close friends is just realizing the spectrum in which my friends exist on right now. Like people are my age that have it more together than me. Like I got the friends that work at Fortune 500 companies that are freaking like tech geniuses that are the people that like they're writing books about right now.
But do they have kids?
Some do, some don't, so on and so forth.
Right.
But then I also got the friends that are the same age that are also like, if they were to pop up right now and tell me they were pregnant or their partner was pregnant, I would be in fear for that child's life because like they're just not ready. Like all of that is a realistic spectrum that can exist for any of these people right now.
Right.
Like I'm at that age where like all of these things make sense for this age group. Like you can have it together, you can completely not have it together, you can be prepared to be settling down in your life, you could be not. Like all of that makes sense in this age group, you know? So like it's interesting because like I didn't necessarily look at people like, oh, you're supposed to have it together. It actually made me feel a little bit more of a peer in a lot of these spaces when I dealt with like people in their early 30s, because at the age I was when I first got into this, like I started coffee at 20. So I wasn't in the same space as the 20-year-olds around me. I had a 2-year-old at this time, or almost 2-year-old at the time. Most of my 20-year-old friends were either in college, didn't go to college, and was like full-time artists. Like they were still flying by the seat of their pants, and I was as well, but I wasn't supposed to be. Like
Right.
I was flying by it because like I just hadn't developed the maturity yet, but I had to figure it out. So like when you talk about like, y'all was upset because this person's supposed to have it together and I gotta have it together because I got this kid, like a lot of that was more internal battles of like, I need to have it together because I have this kid and I can't blame the people around me for not having it together. And I don't necessarily have the influences around me to help me get it together quicker. I just got to fumble and fumble and fumble
Right.
until I get
And
it
we
right.
all do, right?
Yeah. But like, it's interesting when like I work in these spaces that gave me a little bit more understanding of how a lot of people don't have it together yet. So like now I'm at this age and I am way more understanding of my friends that are still just out there having fun and living their lives, that don't have the same responsibilities, don't have kids, don't need to like have to lock it down and settle down because they have the freedom to do what they want. And I'm able to be a better friend and like in some ways mentor when they ask, because I have a lot more grace towards the time that they're in and the space that they're in, because I got to experience that from the people that I work next to. There weren't as many people that I worked next to that were on the same, like, I got to go get it in the same way mentality that I had. And I've built some really close friends with people that are like that. A shout out to Elizabeth out in Cali. Like, her and I have built a real good friendship because we're both around the same age with kids the same age. Our freaking coffee journey trajectory is almost congruent. But like, it's allowed me to hold the space for those that didn't come from that background, that didn't have the same stakes put in front of them. And I've learned from a lot of those people as well too, which has made me be a little bit better to myself. Like, because that work ethic, that like I have to get it done, I have to do it perfectly, leads to some pressure that ultimately makes you screw up more, because you're so afraid to be wrong. You're so afraid to be flawed because of the stakes that are involved, that you end up being flawed out of fear of not screwing up, rather than just, being free and letting your best self show and letting things just happen how they may. You're trying to like influence results to go the way you want them to. It's like the people that get on that timeline where they're like, I want to be married by this time, I want to have kids by this time, I want to do X, Y, and Z in my life in this specific way, that you start to try to force those things to happen, and it only leads you to more pain because you're trying to force it and not letting the world happen around you. And that's, I feel like that's kind of what happened professionally in a lot of ways. Like, I've grown and learned so much because I was so dedicated, but I've also like ended up in situations like the one I told you where I worked myself into like absolute paranoia at a place that I didn't need to be at for as long as I did, because I needed to advance my career. And I ended up having these experiences that were really just troubling, that I probably could have avoided if I took the time to be gracious with myself. I say all that to
how much is that is self-preservation though? Because
oh no, all of it's self-preservation. All of it is. But like, in the moment, you don't see it. And then you think about, like, when you look back on it, you think of the things that you gained from it, and you're happy for the opportunities, you're happy for the blessings, but you then also think of, like, how many things could have been better if I didn't subject myself to certain, like, like negative experiences.
Oh yeah, totally, man. Everything would have been a lot better, but you, we're in this position of growth because we're learning so much about ourselves and everything around us because we have that threat
Right.
of I could lose this, and then where will I be to protect and take care of my family?
Right.
You
But
know?
the thing that we've gotten to see from the industry is there are so many old heads. Sorry, no shots being taken, but there's so many old heads that like treat the way other people come up in this industry as you have to have the same dedication I did to get to where I did. You got to go through what I went through to get here. And so many doors don't get open for people because people are trying to like determine your dedication to it by how much trauma you're willing to go through for it.
But it's not necessary. Well, it's not necessarily you have to have the same dedication. You have to have the same positive attitude to this job that you have to do. You have a job, and if you're failing at your job, you shouldn't be in this job.
But sometimes it's not that though, because I'm talking about like, think about all of the different occupations within the coffee industry that I've had. I'm not the most individually talented at any one of these things. I'm kind of jack of all trades, master of none, like if we're going to be totally honest about it. But I know people that like their individual skill sets from who they are as people would make them really gifted at any of these things. But if people haven't seen you go through the fire, they're not willing to open the door for you. So there's people that I know, like I think of like people I came up in the industry with where I'm like, damn, you would have been great at green buying. You would be a great Q grader. You would be a great salesperson. You would be a great person running systems and production. You would be a great roaster. But that door hasn't been open for you because people are looking for you to like pick, like give your pound of blood to the cause to prove that you're willing to do this, because the way that they know that they earn their stripes is all of the things that they went through and suffered to get an opportunity to walk in the door. And rather than us, the like new regime changing that reality, there's so many people that still perpetuate it. It's almost like pledging, where people are like, hey, I went through it this way, so this is how you got to go through it. And the world changes, things become different.
But still, even if you put in that pint of blood, there's no guarantee that they're going to give you what you deserve.
That's the point. That's literally my point. Like, there are so many people that are in positions of power now that go, I need to see you put this in so I know that you're worth it. And no guarantee on the other end that you put that in. And, you know, and the reality is you probably shouldn't even have to go through all that. Right. And we're talking about those experiences of being there and going through that stuff. And I'm thinking about so many people that have kind of like not continued this, not actually gone down the route, lost their inspiration, lost their dedication to it. And like that plays a lot into kind of like where I've been at sometimes these days. Cause like most of the people that look like me that I came up with aren't in the spaces that I'm in now.
They're gone.
You know?
Yep.
And then like in the spaces I'm in now, I don't really like I exist in the space because I understand like the work, but it ain't like most of the people relate to me. You know, like respectfully speaking, there are 2 black people at Black and White. Hi. It's us.
Hey, how you doing?
Yeah. You know, like I love our team. Everybody here has been absolutely great to me. I've had a great experience at this company, but at the same time, like there is like a full 75% to 80% of my existence that just does not relate in this space to people. And it makes me an individual. It makes people like know these things about me that stand out, but they're not things that build commonality. So a lot of times in this space, I'm still going to be the version of me that is comfortable, is myself, but is palatable. And that's just me talking race right now, you know?
Yeah.
In plenty of other spaces, it's gender identity, sexual orientation, religious beliefs, so on and so forth. There's so many of these things that like you enter spaces where you can't really be the full, complete version of yourself because the people around you won't get it, won't deem it professional, won't give you the opportunity to advance and grow. And while I'm blessed to have gotten the opportunity to advance and grow, one thing that does happen is without like-minded or like-experienced people around me, a lot of that journey doesn't become a conversation. And when that conversation isn't stoked, when when that part of me that is going through this in real time and who I am is developing isn't being able to be like flushed out with people in the same space, you kind of lose the you kind of lose the dedication in that space, because you lose the thing that like kept you going.
Right.
Like when I was striving to make it to a point where I was able to develop this career, I had people that I was next to that were seeing me reach for it. And even if they weren't going the same direction as me, trying to do the same thing as me, they were still pouring into me. Like I think of working in Vigilante and having my black coworkers, my friends that are seeing me try to do more. And they're like, hey man, that's not for me, but like I could pour into you and make sure that you still have it to push through all the nonsense you're dealing with. And then the higher up you go, the less of those people that are around you.
Yeah.
So as someone that's been doing this double the time as me, how do you continue to find that dedication? How do you continue to find those things that pour back into you to be able to keep doing this in a space where there's not many of you, or not many of the things that inspire you still around?
In the past, it's always been stepping outside of the box. And there was a period where I didn't even know that there was an outside of the box. I felt like it was always like this everywhere. You know what I'm saying? So here in, the cafes where you work, where there's a lot of people like us, that you work with, your coworkers, your friends, that's foreign to me, because going from the cafe to counterculture, it was the exact same space. It was just a little bit bigger. So finding that inspiration, a lot of it had to do with competition, because getting out of North Carolina, there might be one other brother or sister in the competition, but there was one other brother and sister in the competition.
Fair enough.
Or that big company meeting when, Tamika Lawrence would come down or Dee would come down. I did have Ken, you know what I'm saying, working at Counterculture. He was a tech. So there was those moments of inspiration, but I had to step outside of the box, and I found my inspiration basically outside of coffee. Holding on to DJing for a long time really helped, because music was my escape from everything since I was a child, being different in the neighborhoods where I grew up. They were black neighborhoods, but I had a different path that a lot of the kids didn't understand. So it was different from what they wanted. And so I got in a lot of fights, So music was always my escape. And that was, where I found my inspiration outside of coffee until I stopped doing music. But then the competition career took off and people started to notice who I was. And my inspiration came from people, older folks in the industry. No, they didn't look like me, but they understood who I was and my struggle.
Right.
So that's where my inspiration came from. Meeting farmers at Expo, going on origin trips. The further I made it into competition, the more origin trips I went on. So that was a lot where I found my inspiration, and a lot of my inspiration came from my wife.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
You said the further you made it in competition, you hadn't made finals until the year that you won.
Right.
So when you say the further you made it in the competition, the more origin trips you went on, how many origin trips had you gone on before you made finals? Like screw winning, but just finals.
Let's see. So I won region. Back in the day, there was regionals.
Right.
And so the first regional I won, Counterculture was a sponsor, and it was an all-expense paid trip to Charlotte. So they were like, well, we're going to take you to Nicaragua.
Right.
And that was huge because I studied Central American politics in college. I followed the Iran-Contra affair. I followed the Civil War in Nicaragua in high school. So that was huge. And then when I won the first origin trip sponsor was Cafe Imports. And in 2012, I think, in Atlanta, I won a regional, and the origin trip was to Kenya. huge
Mhm.
because I've always wanted to go to Africa. And being a black barista, going to an origin trip in Africa, in Kenya,
Mhm.
was massive.
Yeah.
So that's where I found a lot of inspiration. Big shout out to Cafe Imports for that trip. And then I won another one, went to Colombia. And that was dope because I linked up with Sasha Sessick was on that trip. Sam Lewington was on that trip.
My dog.
Yeah.
My dog, man.
You know what I mean? So Ryan Soder was on that trip. These are all like big wigs in the industry, and I got to kick it with them, you know?
I mean, that's why I asked that, because like for me, I've made finals. Where my career competition wise goes to be determined. We'll see what I decide to do.
You should do it again. Just saying.
Of course you think I should do it again. We're gonna that's neither here nor there. It really depends on where my career goes. But the reality of it is I've never gone to Origin. And I'm not saying that like I deserve to go because I've like done well in comp or anything like that. But what I am saying is like the thing that reinvigorated you is part of like the things that I've never experienced.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of getting to this point where like that inspiration's not necessarily as prominent.
Yeah.
Because my inspiration
it's not
my
at all.
inspiration was never about coffee, if that makes sense. I've always like coffee was the medium to do important work. The medium to care about people, the medium to allow people to have spaces to be their authentic self. It was never like, hey, I'm going to get great at coffee or fall in love with coffee because the product is the thing, you know?
Right.
So it gets a little difficult when it's not like, hey, I'm being ambitious and chasing this thing. It gets a little difficult when I'm not getting to very directly go, hey, here's how I can impact the people that I care about in the spaces that I care about. I was watching another podcast. One of my favorite basketball players, Amon Shumpert, has a podcast where he had Ron Artest, Meta World Peace on there, right? And Meta World Peace is talking about his rookie orientation, like before the draft. They're all meeting, like all the rookies are meeting, and they're doing their like induction into the NBA. The commissioner's there, and he's talking about the NBA Cares like charity programs that they do, right? And he just like blurts out, and his first words in front of the commissioner ever was, "So what are we gonna do for the hood?" And everybody's like, "Yo, you can't say that here, like it's corporate." but like really, like he's like that's what I care about, and that has always like influenced how I navigated my career. And so for me, I'm sitting back like I have always been like, how does the work that I do allow more people that look like me to be comfortable in their spaces? And I think that it's been a lot harder to see that tangibly when I'm not working in a cafe, when I'm not working in a city, when I'm not necessarily having the same touch points as I did before. But like getting to the point that I got to was necessary in order to like take care of my loved ones. So it's like I'm in this weird quagmire of I want to do that important work. I want to impact people that matter to me, but I also want to make sure that my loved ones are taken care of.
Right.
So
it's tough because you don't see the results of the work that you do that influences people. And I didn't see it at all. And I was done at a point. I didn't want to compete anymore because I felt like I wasn't reaching anyone, you know? And then this cat rose up to me and he's like, yo, I really appreciate what you're doing. You're really blazing a trail for people like us. And I was like, oh, so maybe I am reaching somebody, you know what I'm saying? But I don't see that on a day-to-day basis because I don't work with people that look like me, you know? And so I kept doing it. And then I finally won one. And it's weird because, 7 years later, there still hasn't been another black barista champion in the United States.
Yeah, that's true.
And that's wild to me, especially after that moment we had, the Hennessy moment.
I mean,
I'm like, yo, that was dope.
I mean, one of us got to finals. Like, like let's be real. There was none made it to finals before you won.
Right.
And that's not me saying that there's progress. That's not me saying that like the work is done or anything of that nature, but
But
for-
that moment, that
right.
was progress.
right.
I think.
It
And
was.
Yeah.
But it's so fleeting and few far in between. And then my experience being very different than yours, whereas like you're like, that was progress because I never got to see it. And for me, I look at these things like I got to see it
Yeah.
in like the places I came up in.
Yeah,
Because
yeah,
the
yeah,
reality of
yeah.
it is some of my favorite baristas ever, they not in this space.
Yeah.
They not here. I know how good they are.
They north of Richmond.
Right. and then when I get to these spaces that don't look like that. So like what you would call progress in that space, I go, it's catching up to what I experienced in the first
Right.
place. So it's really hard when that stuff isn't there.
And
like
finding that inspiration
Mhm.
is even more difficult.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's the thing I'm trying to figure out now is like how do you get your love back? Another podcast that I listened to, they were talking about this quote that Nikola Jokic, the person that just won the Finals MVP, just won the NBA championship, he was talking about being a basketball player, and he's just like, there's nobody in the NBA that loves this job, and like if they tell you they do, they're lying. And then they asked a player about it, and he was just like, all of the work that leads up to you being able to be on the court, like being on the court, I love that shit. Like that's it for me. Like I love to compete, but the prep you got to do every day, the work you got to do, that's a job. And like
Yeah.
he's right. Like no one loves the job, but you have to be able to do it to make it to this point.
Yeah.
And like when you spin back the competition, like them 15 minutes on stage,
Yeah.
I
Love
love that.
Love it.
Oh, like if I could bypass all of the stuff that goes into,
Yeah.
you wouldn't have to ask me to compete.
That's why
again.
you want to make semifinals. That's why you want to make finals, just so you can just do that
Do that.
15 minutes one more time.
Yeah,
you know?
that is
Because
easy.
after you done, you got to go all the way back.
Right.
And that's why a lot, especially in the U.S., you don't have a lot of U.S. champions repeat
Mm-hmm.
because that going all the way back from Worlds all the way back to the beginning,
Exactly.
that's a lot of work.
Right. And that was me with just finals. Like
Yeah.
like the 15 minutes I'm on stage, cool. Like them 10 minutes I had in Denver, like cool. That the lead up, carrying all them wares,
Yeah.
the work that goes through.
You got a family.
like-
you got your job you got to do because you got to feed your family.
Exactly. Like,
You know, it's like, it's way
so
too much.
easy it's so easy for the Showtime stuff to be glamorous. It is really hard to gear up to do that work every day.
Yeah.
And
Like,
that's
they
and
don't
that's
they
not
don't
just
see you
competition.
drinking espresso at midnight during the middle of the week.
But like that's and that's just competition. Like
Yeah.
they don't see like you driving, 30 pounds of coffee 3-4 hours away to an account because they need this to be able to keep their business running. And if you don't do it, they not gonna want to stay working with you. And then that
Yeah.
cuts into your pot. Like there's so much of the non-glamorous day-to-day that happens in this that even though like the through line is coffee, it's very different than the thing that got you into it or the thing that inspired you. Like there are times where like just the things you have to do to keep the job running is not glamorous. It's not pretty. And
Well, let me
it's-
ask you this.
Yeah.
How often do you write?
Oh, dog, I don't write nowhere near as much as I used to.
Yeah.
Nowhere near it.
Because I've always found like creative moments are a source of inspiration, you know?
But that's why my routines are good because those are like a few times I get to have a creative outlet and
Right,
have the
right,
time to.
Right.
Because like the truth of the matter is like when I leave here, it's back to being dad. It's back to
Yeah.
being a husband. It's back to being big brother. It's like
Yeah.
there are so many things that are moving constantly that make it so that I can't just slow down in the way that I would like to.
Yep.
Outside of just work. And they're all different forms of work when it happens. So like there's not much time for me to go, hey, this is this thing that I love, that I enjoy, that fulfills me, that doesn't have any benefit to my lived experience elsewhere other than like it makes me happy, where I can really have the time to just go do that. I don't really have many passion projects that are
Yeah.
just like passion. It's like passion to a means, passion to an end. And when you get to that point, because we're all taught this grind, like to get to the spots that we get to. It's why I brought up the whole like the mentors and the people that are in positions to open the doors for people are like, prove it to me, prove that you want this. It makes people develop that mindset of everything has to be for some type of like progression. that it doesn't allow you to go. Music's my escape. I get to just DJ in the crib and play with sound. That's something I would love to do that I don't get to do.
Yeah.
Writing can be an escape. Like those escapes don't happen. The
Yeah, it
escapes
don't
become-
happen no more. Like
Yeah.
after the second child was born, Zora, the studio got packed up.
Yeah, and I'm hello.
It's
I'm
in
on
the
child
attic.
3.
It's
I
in
feel
the
you.
attic. When child 3 came, you could forget about music. You could forget about reading.
Mhm.
It's like work, family, try and get some sleep.
So how do you find, and I'm asking you as a person that is more experienced than me, how do you find that re-inspiration? Like, what do you do to pour back into yourself to be able to do this grind?
Well, lately it's been, especially with all the health stuff, I've had a few months to sit down and figure out, that jumping point of like who I was and who I am now. You know what I'm saying? So setting those priorities, it's always been, it's as of now, health, family, black and white, and then whatever time is left, first come, first serve, but the whole thing with me now is trying to be as mindful as I can. And a lot of that is really tuning into my kids and watching their growth. And that's where I find my inspiration now. It's not coffee. It's not coffee farmers. It's not black and white. It's not competition. Kyle has taken that and run with it. I don't have time to put into coffee like I did before. So now it's like, these kids aren't going to stay kids very long, and I want to be present. So that's where I find my inspiration. I find my inspiration in those little ones. As much as they drive me crazy, you know what I'm saying?
Yep.
Even those moments of like, yo, I really want to put you through a wall right now. Stop asking me questions. Even those moments, I have to be mindful of those moments and realize that they're not forever. You know what I'm saying? And they're going to be gone. And so that's where I find my inspiration, watching them grow, both in the good and the bad,
Yeah.
So for you, you got a lot going on. And I know you got a lot going on.
Yeah, but yes, I obviously find inspiration and happiness in seeing my children grow. I've always been the parent that thinks about the fact that, especially because I'm young, unless, something untimely happens, my children are going to have way more experience knowing me as an adult than they do a child. So I try to be the type of parent that they will be proud of as an adult, that they'll be able to look back on and go, okay, cool, X, Y, and Z happened. These are the things that we had to grow from. But I'm not walking away with this long-term harbored resentment, because, we know how that exists. Just as all of us become young adults at some point, we start to reassess our childhood and our relationship with our parents, all that stuff. So I've always been very focused on that. I think the thing that has always been really difficult for me, and, I've been really rediscovering this as, my daughter just graduated elementary school. She's going into middle school, and I'm kind of looking at this like, I'm at minimum the halfway point of her childhood. And I got my 2 young boys now, and it's like, I've still this entire time been chasing a livelihood to be a better, for them to have more access and more stuff. I haven't gotten to a point where I'm comfortable with what I'm able to provide them. So I'm still constantly working and pushing and having these changes happen in my world, with the end goal being to do things better for them. And it's really hard sometimes to kind of just take a step back from it and go, hey, well, you've gotten so far from what they would have experienced if you would have stayed pat when you had your first child. You've gotten to grow so much that they're having these better experiences than what you would have envisioned. But I'm still going, but I want them to have more. I want them to have a better livelihood. I want them to have better childhood memories that they get to walk away with, and experiences and things they're able to do and all that other stuff. And it's just like that. It feels like you're on a hamster wheel. It feels like you're chasing so much. And I'm trying to figure out how to stay inspired in that chase while I'm chasing, like stay inspired so that I can continue to do more for them, but how to find moments of peace and gratefulness in what I've done so far. Because
And it's hard.
it
I
always feels
understand
like
that's
it's not
hard because
enough.
you've had that network of, people in your circle, black people, black coworkers, and now you don't have that
Yeah.
access. I never had that access, so I'm more accustomed to it. And now, owning a company, I don't have that. I mean, it's still there of like, yo, if this is gone, if all this black and white just completely implodes, what next?
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like I've put in 20 years and accomplished something that I feel confident that I can create something else
Right.
if this was all to fall.
Mm-hmm.
So that thing in the back of my head isn't as big as it was back in my counterculture days when I saw like, okay, they grew too much and so now they have to let go of some people.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't want to be that squeaky wheel
Mm-hmm.
that gets on the chopping block.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to like express how I really feel about things that happens in this company because I don't want to be on that chopping block when it comes around again.
Yeah, I think I've gotten past that point. Like I
Yeah.
don't think that I'm like expendable or like I will just be the squeaky wheel. And like the reality is sometimes you might be that squeaky wheel regardless of how good you are at anything. But I know that I've developed enough within my career that like I'll be okay. Like I
Yeah.
can go somewhere else and do the things. But it's a matter of like before when I would lose a job, I was hungry. I had something that I was still chasing, something I was still trying to do. Not to say that I'm not hungry anymore, but like something that like was so directly like glaring. Like I have to get to this point to be able to develop security or stability that like even if someone threw a freaking monkey wrench in my way, someone fired me after a 14 to 16 hour shift, I could go, well, I'm too hungry for you to defeat me. Like this is just
Yeah.
a minor setback.
Right.
Now it's like, how do I find the love in this to the point, and not just for me, but just for all the people that I know that got lost along the way.
Yep.
How do we find the love in this that makes them continue this and not just walk away?
Right.
Is my question. And figuring that out is the journey that I'm on right now because I understand in a whole new way why so many people I came up with are not here anymore.
Yeah. And that was one of the reasons for starting a company like Black and White was to create these opportunities, I mean, you can't create opportunities for everybody, but if you could just save one. Because it's tough watching people who are so great at what they do walk away from what they do because they can't do it anymore.
Right.
Or
they don't love it anymore, even
right.
though they were so good at it,
Yeah.
you know?
Or they don't have, or they put in, that pint of blood thinking that, yes, this person is going to give me access or this person is going to give me that opportunity that I deserve.
Yeah.
And then they don't.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like a kick in the face.
Yeah.
Like, I just gave you, my heart and soul. I gave you everything, and now you're just going to turn your back on me.
Yeah.
And that just makes people just want to walk away.
Yeah.
100%.
And there are so many people that have experienced that. Like,
Yeah.
I got so many friends that's their story. That's why they're not here anymore, or not even in the spaces that I met them in.
Yeah.
They're not part of the industry in that, even in those mediums, because, like, it hurts. And it's crazy. I remember, random fun fact, a couple weeks ago, somebody was down here doing a demo with our team of, like, some product that they got for us. They work with an importer now.
Oh, yeah.
And me and this young lady's talking, and she tells me where she's from, and I'm like, yo, you used to work at such and such place, and one of my best friends used to work there. And they're like, that's one of your best friends? Yo, where is he? I haven't heard from him in forever. And then I'm just like, I talk to him pretty much every day. I know how
Word.
he do, but like they were so good that they were like right there on the precipice of being able to pivot out of their previous role to working at a place that this coffee thing could have become like a logical career for them.
Right.
But they lost the love for it because of the experiences that happen around them. And it's like, you know, they're doing good now. They're on the path that they're supposed to be on. But how many people were supposed to be on this path that got off it because those decision makers were terrible?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I think about that sometimes, man. But we're all on a path, right? And I feel like no matter the good or the bad that happens in our lives, we are where we are supposed to be. You know what I'm saying?
I want to believe that.
I honestly believe that we are where we are supposed to be. I mean, we may be going through. I mean, everybody goes through some shit, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it could be your darkest hour, but you were meant to go through that for something that's about to happen.
Probably. That I do agree with, but I don't think that.
And whether it's coffee or not,
Mm-hmm.
that's your path.
Yeah.
But if there are opportunities for you, hopefully there are opportunities for you. You're ready to take those opportunities. You know, you're prepared for those opportunities.
Yeah, but I'm a little bit more comfortable with people having the opportunity in front of them and turning it down to go onto a different path than a door getting shut in front of them or being like pulled from underneath their feet because they thought this was their path and it feels at least like someone else decided it wasn't.
I mean, I felt like music was my path, you know? I was DJing, started a band. The band was on this trajectory that, you know, we felt like Sony was going to sign us. And it hit a point where it was a fork in the road for me, where they wanted us to move to New York. I wasn't going to leave my daughter. So I chose not to take that path.
Right.
I took a different path. And that path led me to coffee, you know? So, yeah, the opportunity was there, and I turned it down.
Right. Right, that's what I mean. Like, you made that call.
Yeah,
you know?
I made that call. And then in coffee, there was a call that was made for me.
Yeah.
I felt like I was going in a different direction than I am now. I put in that pint of blood. I put in 2 pints of blood. I put in 10 years of pints of blood for this company. And that wall was drawn up.
Yeah.
Whether it was on purpose or not, I don't know. I don't really care at this point, but that wall was dropped and I didn't leave coffee.
Right.
I could have.
Right.
But I didn't.
Right, but
I pivoted.
But that's the thing though. Like, you are able to have that conversation now 6+ years later. You know?
Yeah.
I don't think I'm 6+ years away from any of the things that I've experienced, and and most of the people that I've experienced them with aren't 6+ years away from it.
And maybe in 6 years from now, we'll have this conversation
maybe,
again.
Maybe we'll feel different thing, but like,
and maybe I'll feel completely different.
Right.
You know?
But in the moment, going through the storm, in the
It's
moment,
tough.
you didn't feel those same things.
It's
you know?
tough.
And everybody makes different decisions when they're in the midst of a storm. So it's like, I think about that, and I think about how to hold grace for people in the storm. In the storm. Like, what does it look like to make it so that people are in control of those decisions that they want to make when they feel someone else has closed the door on them again? You know?
I mean, I feel like we are in control. It may not feel like we're in control, but you have a choice to wallow in that sadness, that anger, that despair, that darkness, or you can fight your way out of it. You know?
Yeah.
What helps to fight your way out of it is to have that inspiration.
Right.
Where can you find that inspiration? Back to your original question.
Mm-hmm. So for all those y'all out there that are trying to figure it out, trying to decide if this is the realm for you, um, at least know that these are not questions that go away. Like, you are always trying to figure out what drives you, what makes you a better person, what makes you determined in the spaces that you're in. And it always changes. And you will always come to a crossroads and always have a decision to make. But looking back at it, you will be able to see where those decisions took you and how they've shaped you. And today's conversation has been...
Man, let me tell you something.
Go ahead.
We started out super happy
Yeah.
with a storm
Yeah.
above us.
Yeah.
The storm has passed, and we're all dark and gloomy.
We're not dark and gloomy.
We're dark
though.
and gloomy.
We're
Wags,
not dark and gloomy.
We're dark and gloomy over here.
I don't think we're
again.
dark and gloomy. I think
I
we
think
are.
you got a little serious.
Yeah, I think we're serious. I think we're serious. I think we had fun, but like, that's the thing. All fun is within context. All things that you enjoy have some layers of truth. The phrase "all good jokes contain truth." You know, like
Right.
we're dissecting that truth that is behind all of it. It's why during that super busy shift, you got me and my coworkers singing "Lean on Me" when we're like got lines out the door and we're stressed out, because we're able to find that laughter, that humor in it, but the truth still is there.
Yeah.
So we spent the time going from that fun, going from that jovialness, that lightheartedness to what's happening under it that isn't always necessarily like gloomy, but it's real and it holds
And that's
gravity.
that bond that you form.
Yeah.
You know, that's that bond that you form. And to be honest, that's where we gotta fall back and find that inspiration.
Yeah.
In those bonds. You know,
And
whether
I'm
those folks
trying.
are still on coffee or not.
Yeah.
Maybe you should call them up, and be like, "Yo,
Yeah.
remember that time we sang Lean on Me?
Yup.
I need to lean
sir.
on you right now."
Yeah. So for all those that y'all need to lean on, man, thank y'all for taking the time to listen to us. Once again, this is The Journey, the podcast, 95 plus. I am Anthony Ragler.
I'm Lem Butler.
Thank y'all for coming on this journey with us. We're going to holler at y'all again soon. Peace.
Two
Two
times.
times.